All right, as we now move into angiosperms, angiosperms are the flowering plants. We're going to look at the particularly Anthophyta as the actual phylum name. This is sort of the overall name for the group. And generally they're also referred to as the broad-leafed plants, whereas the gymnosperms are not all pine needles. The ginkgo has a flat, broad leaf, but typically most of the gymnosperms have little needles, like little pine needles, pines and firs, like that. So, and most all of the angiosperms have a flat leaf with a very large surface area. So what we're going to do is talk just a little bit about some leaf shape and arrangements, and then the actual leaf tissue structure. That's kind of just going to be a specific thing we'll go over at the moment. So first off, the leaves can be sort of a simple leaf, all right, like this, or we can have complex leaves. So we can have some leaves that have a petiole. So this would be the petiole, and this is the single leaf. This is a petiole. So this is technically a single leaf, but it's a compound one where you have then multiple leaflets coming off it. All right. So, but we're not going to go into it too much detail. One thing about leaves that we can see if you look at them is the pattern of the veins. All right. So the veins are structures like this, like running through the leaf. That is essentially the vascular bundle. All right. So we have the xylem. And the phloem packaged here. Some leaves have a veination pattern that is parallel. It's kind of weak. Let's see if this is any better. Some leaves have a pattern that we then call pinnate. Yeah, that was a little better. And then some leaves have a much more branched pattern that is called palmate. You will also find that the reference to these terms, pinnate and palmate, are often used when talking about the compound leaves too, because in this case now we have this one petiole and it's just kind of branching outward from that one point, kind of like this branches out, branch. All right, that's considered a compound leaf that's palmately compound. Whereas this one kind of has one central axis and then the leaflets kind of branch off it like this, which is just kind of like this, one central axis and then the veins kind of branching off it like that. So this is a compound pinnate. And that's very, very general overview of some of the compound leaves versus the simple leaves, and then some of the patterns. There are a lot more. There's a lot more for the lobes of the leaves, and there's all kinds of terminology. If you were actually in an actual botany course, you would be really going into a lot more detail in all the different names for all the different types and style of leaves, but that's not really something that is for our particular course. But it is important to give you the introduction to it and the basic terminology, and that's it now. If we then took a little section through the leaf and looked at it, I'm actually missing a layer here, and that's kind of where we'll start, I think, is with, and then for that part we're going to erase a little bit right there. And what is that I'm drawing here, right here at the end, is the cuticle. All right, so we have a cuticle. A waxy covering, and it's really on and the way we're orienting this here is this is the top side of the leaf, and this is the bottom side of a leaf. Right, so the leaf is, if you ever look at a leaf, you'll actually see even the colorations are slightly different, from often one side to the other, right? They have, and there's sort of a some repetition in the pattern of layers, and then there's some unique differences that are more toward one side or the other. So that's kind of what you need to take away from this. So the top side is usually the side where the light, is hitting it. Plants can actually orient often their leaves even through the day, kind of twisting them slightly to be more oriented toward light. The way people now then have had solar panels on a little motor that can then move them the same way that plant leaves do, so they can follow the sun throughout the day to maximize the amount of photosynthesis that they can do. All right, so cuticle first, then underneath the cuticle is the epidermis. There's the top layer of epidermis. There's a bottom layer of epidermis. Okay, so this is typically called the lower layer and the upper layer. So lower and the upper epidermis. So it's kind of the same, top and bottom. Cuticle, epidermis. One of the differences you're going to have here now on the lower epidermis and cuticle, you'll have our stoma and guard cells. So gas exchange is often taking place on the bottom side of the leaf. So usually it's carbon dioxide. It's being taken in, and so the guard cells are the ones that can actually swell. These are kind of more in a swollen state here, if you look like, but then the guard cells, can also open up more, and then allow, the gases then through into this area here, which we'll get to in just a second. All right. So cuticle, epidermis. The lower epidermis then and cuticle then has the guard cells and the openings, the stoma. But now we'll come back to the top side. What we have here are this layer and this layer. They're both types of chlorenchyma tissue. But you can see they're drawn a little bit different here. And that's because they're organized different, they're structured a little bit different. Both the cells and then the arrangement of the cells are different. All right, so this top layer here, so the one on the top side, is called Palisade Mesophyll. So I'm trying to find a better place to kind of put this here. Well, I'll just write it here, the Palisade Mesophyll. So the Palisade Mesophyll is the tissue that has a large density of chloroplasts, both in the cells, and then the cells themselves are very densely packed together. So they're a group of densely packed cells, and the cells themselves are densely packed internally with chloroplasts. So close up to the surface here of the leaf, where light is coming in, this is the site where a majority of photosynthesis is taking place, here in the Palisade Mesophyll. We'll get to this again in a second. All right. Underneath that is the Spongy Mesophyll. So the Spongy Mesophyll, well, they're chloroplasts here, in these cells as well, but they are more irregular in arrangement and much more spread out, so there is a lot of space in between them. So in this space, we actually have air coming into it. So the gases actually come in then through the stomata and then into that space. Now these cells themselves often will have a little layer of water as well that will surround them. And this air-water interface then around the outside of these cells is what allows a lot of gas exchange to take place. In a way, you could think of it somewhat like our lungs, where we inhale, and then there's a place where diffusion of gases takes place, where carbon dioxide is taken out into the air, and then oxygen is pulled into those cells, and it's these cells here that are doing a lot of that gas exchange. So the Spongy Mesophyll is where we primarily see a lot of the gas exchange taking place And the Palisade Mesophyll is where we have a lot of photosynthesis taking place. And then it would only make sense, right, that running right through the middle of this area where you got a lot of photosynthesis taking place, well, think about it, right? In the photosynthesis, all the organic molecules are then produced there, and then they're going into the phloem, which is carrying the organic molecules away from the sites of photosynthesis. And then the xylem is bringing in water up from the roots, and the water is necessary for photosynthesis to take place. And then they can then move the nutrients and water all then through the rest of the sponge. So we have these vascular bundles here that have again the xylem and phloem inside them, and that's kind of running through the middle of the leaf, and that's the veins that are running through the leaves. So that's pretty much it for this part here. We're just kind of focusing a little bit on the broad-leafed plant structure, so the angiosperm leaf structures, and you just have a little bit of terminology about arrangement of the veins in the leaves, arrangement of leaves, sort of themselves, and then a little bit of the layers of cell and tissue arrangement within a leaf section itself. So you should be able to kind of label these things and do a real basic explanation of the job that they each do.